Greetings, friends. You are on the Military Reports channel. And today we will discuss with you the situation in Ukraine on the 24th of May, 2024 year. A lot of things have happened today, so let's get started. And the most important interesting news is coming today, as if they are connected with Ukraine, but not far away on the territory of Ukraine. The most interesting thing, most likely the news that everyone is following, is coming today from the Republic of Belarus, from Minsk, where all the Russian leadership has gathered today. Vladimir Putin flew here, and Belasev, the new defense minister, and Shoigu, among others, came here, and Sergei Lavrov came here. And they are all discussing something strenuously and very diligently. Of course, it is not clear to us what questions were at the closed part of the meeting. It is unknown, it is not clear. In the open part, I am now conducting comments all over the network, as if Vladimir Putin's comments are spreading. And the most important of them is that, in principle, Russia stands for negotiations, for the completion of a special military operation, firm the conditions of the special military operation, firm the realities on earth, and most importantly, what question Putin raised today, and most importantly, officially recognized that Zelensky had lost his legitimacy. In other words, Putin clearly said, Zelensky is a more illegitimate president, and the question remains open. With whom we will negotiate. And of course, against the background of all this, a very interesting situation is that today, in addition to Putin, Belasev, Lavrov, Yanukovych would have arrived in the Republic of Belarus, let's say, the former president of Ukraine, who, according to, let's say, the theory of the Russian Federation, was illegally overthrown by unconstitutional means, and was also taken to this meeting. Is this some kind of negotiations by Yanukovych himself on the issue of, let's say, his return to power? Maybe. Or perhaps this is just another hint, another, let's say, reproach, proof to the West, that we now also have the same illegitimate president as you, Zelensky. Also today, there was a very interesting phrase that Putin says that the main purpose of the Swiss peace process negotiations is to show in the eyes of European politicians that Zelensky is not timid. In other words, if you are present at this event, if Zelensky is present with you, then you recognize that he is a legitimate president. Naturally, after all these moments, when everyone more or less realized what was happening, the outflow of German capital began, so to speak. Oh, Russia is not going there, India is not going there, China is not going there, Joe Biden is not going there. In general, the procedure itself, the process itself is absolutely useless and unnecessary. Of course, there will be some politicians who will still insist that Zelensky is a legitimate president, but these are their only questions, their only understanding of the realities. But here the situation is, as it were, what we see on the surface with you. This is the tip of the iceberg. And what will open up under, let's say, the surface of the water is, first of all, that the Russian Federation is planning, and very much wants, to complete a special military operation in the near future, and in the shortest possible time. It is difficult to say what exactly they paid and talked to Lukashenko about. But today, let's say, Ukrainian parliamentarians started to get hysterical and raise hysteria, saying that I don't want to escalate the situation, but I don't rule out the opening of a Russian-Belarusian second front. And it's not about Yanukovych. Everyone came to Minsk with Putin, just everyone. The new minister of their defense, and Lavrov himself. This is bad, this is very bad. So let's say, Parliamentarian Shevchenko from the Verkhovna Rada described the situation, let's say. And again, whether there will be the opening of a second front, there will not be, this is not an important question at all. The most important thing is that Russia wants to finish the military operation very quickly and as soon as possible. You may wonder why Russia is trying, will it want to? Well, of course this is probably a stupid question, but of course the war dragged on, human casualties. In general, we see with you that almost the entire NATO bloc is fighting against Russia with the hands of Ukraine, and so on and so forth. And now we are moving on to another equally important part, which may also give you an explanation and understanding of why Russia is striving to finish a specially military operation as much as possible. And to be more precise, it is not just to end a specially military operation, but to deprive NATO countries of the opportunity to do very serious and very dangerous things with the hands of Ukraine. Let's go to the south of Ukraine for this. Today there were several important moments, and I let each of you make your own conclusion. In these, for example, frames, we see a whole, let's say, horde flying from Takhmys somewhere in the direction of the Crimea. American ATACMSs, not Ukrainian, not any other American, long-range ATACMSs, fly in the direction of military facilities that were located on the territory of Crimea. We can say that, but in general, this situation has happened before, nothing new. It's as if everyone has come to terms, even to some extent, with this situation. These are new realities, and even the footage of the arrivals themselves, the explosions themselves, was published. Several series were in the area of Alushta, and including the Russian air defense, even tried to shoot down several missiles. But we see with you that it is possible. According to the author of this video, several missiles have reached the target. Later, the Ukrainians and the Sinters, the Ukrainian cartographers there. Everyone who clearly understands everything according to losses from the Russian Federation, assumed that the main target of the strike was this station. I do not know what this station is responsible for, but it is located in this area, but it was on it. According to Ukrainian sources, that such a massive missile attack was carried out by ATACMSs. And it would seem that, well, some apparently important object was being applied, which most likely provides communication with the satellite grouping, only with something else. And today, one more very interesting story has slipped through, which for some reason many have omitted. I literally found this information again on the websites of Ukrainian and centers from those who are engaged in the classification of the damage inflicted on the Russian Federation. And you know, I was not surprised today, to be honest. I was probably even brought to some degree of horror today, realizing what was happening. For example, today, Ukrainian actors also published information that according to their data, the strategic eyes of the Russians were damaged, as they write. The Russian over-the-horizon radar early detection station Voronezh DM. In other words, according to information, as a result of drone strikes, the station of, let's say, premature early detection of nuclear missiles was damaged. In other words, we understand perfectly well for what purpose Ukraine should strike at the early detection stations of nuclear missiles. Well, do they really think that Russia will hit Ukraine with nuclear missiles? Especially like this. And Ukraine will launch a counterstrike of a nuclear missile, and at the same time, it is necessary to suppress these stations in a timely manner. No, we understand very clearly that at the moment, the NATO countries have moved to the following strategy with the hands of Ukraine. As if legally with the hands of Ukraine, they are destroying the means of early detection, strategic defense, in fact. They are beginning. And in this regard, the country of Russia can do nothing, because Ukraine is being legally attacked. Yes, they are getting weapons. Yes, they have received consent from Western countries. What to do about it, until, apparently, we have found some mechanism, because on the one hand, we want to do it very cleverly, cunningly, beautifully, without bringing it to the next stage of escalation, but on the other hand, we see that with you, that the NATO countries, the Americans are primarily doing this very, very popular. And again, strikes are being carried out on the Crimea, air defense strikes are being carried out. Today, there was another published frame, already in the direction of Rostov. How, let's say in these frames, pay attention, according to again Ukrainian sources on counteraction, search, and so on and so forth. A C-300 battery was found. They report, I can't make it out. In principle, I myself do not know what kind of battery is here, but in the course of another Takhmys strike, this system, given the division, was destroyed. That is, and this is already the Air Defense System C, which is located on the way of studying missiles from AMUSs or other missiles, in the direction of the General Staff in Rostov-on-Don. In other words, we see with you that the situation is extremely, extremely heated. Ukraine, the Ukrainian troops have lost their control over, say, internal sources, internal resources. Now the Ukrainian military machine is being used exclusively for the benefit of the country, then. in the maximum possible possibilities with the aim of suppressing and destroying the Russian strategic potential, defense potential. Here are the main reasons. Now you can think, reason, and what will happen next in this case. There will be a story from Bash that it is necessary to solve this whole story as quickly as possible and finish a special military operation. How is this possible? And the negotiations took place today in Minsk between the President of the Republic of Belarus, Vladimir Putin, and all of them, let's say, the highest leadership of the Russian Federation. What have we been waiting for? Let's go to the line of contact with you. Today, it is worth noting that after the absence of any news on Kharkiv, to be more precise in the Liptsovsky direction, the Ministry of Defense, to be more precise, the General Staff of Ukraine reports that Ukrainians are launching a counteroffensive in the area of Leptsov. In other words, we have been talking about this for several days in a row, and today, the General Staff of Ukraine has already confirmed this information. So far, of course, no adjustments have been made to the map. In turn, the Russian army for the first time published footage of multiple launch rocket attacks on different areas and parts of the settlement of Lepsy. In these frames, we see with you a blow to the Lipsy in the area of the Triviansky Reservoir. Here the Grads flew. A little to the south, we see strikes on the most central part of the Leptsov. In other words, these shots first of all confirm to us that the Russian units did not go inside and deep into the Leptsov. There is a complete blockade around the perimeter, and perhaps the Russian units managed to take advantage of these 7 days in order, say, to dig in as deep as possible. As you can see, the Ukrainians did not build defensive lines here during the preparation, which could have happened several times for the past few months. And now, in fact, the Ukrainian units themselves will attack the bare fields that they have not equipped for defense in any way. Well, of course, we will observe this whole situation. What will happen next in the Lipetsk region? Zelensky bloodware now needs to maintain its legitimacy, retain power, and most importantly, it needs to show its effectiveness. Because right now we are reaching a turning point with you. As you can see, the Americans have allowed strikes deep into Russia, on oil refineries, on strategic detection systems, on satellite grouping. And the question is, it turns out that you are ours. We are reducing strategic potential with your hands, and as long as we are interested in it, we will give you and supply you. And Zelensky is also well aware of this now. The stakes have been raised as high as possible. As much as possible. It would seem that perhaps it doesn't seem so from the outside, but they are trying to make it as much as possible, not to show it, not to bring it out, but exactly what we have just discussed with you, and is happening right now in high politics. Then we are moving with you to Volchansk, firm where a large amount of information also comes. As you can see, we restored Ukraine's control over at least 30% of northern Volchansk, and there, including the majority. A large number of cartographers made a similar situation, since after all, neither the citadel, the central part of northern Volchansk, nor the aggregate plant were under the control of the Russian army. These two, let's say, the most important strongholds are still under the control of the APU. And an important point is that the APU is being transferred. They have begun to transfer a large number of reinforcements to the direction in order to stabilize. And again with the aim of launching counteroffensive operations. Well, we'll be watching. All Russian units see everything, absolutely everything. Intelligence works around the clock. Strikes are constantly being inflicted, and in order for the 1,500th to fly, they simply do not have time to charge them. And this, of course, causes significant damage to all units of heights. Since in general it is impossible to contain the front of the equipment somehow with the technological means of the APU. There is only one way, it's cheap infantry. And the infantry needs to be kept somewhere, maintained, watched, and so on and so forth. Of course, artillery and air strikes are regularly carried out on the infantry then. For example, over the past day, A large number of strikes have been inflicted on railway stations in Kharkiv, let's say. Here we see even in these frames another acacia tree. I just arrived at the rally, where it is just unloading. She arrived, let's say, by transport from some direction. She is immediately destroyed with the use of a lancet. Well, then we are moving to the North Cup direction, and here we receive information about the further advancement of Russian units. There are shots confirming the control of the Russian army over at least half of the village of Berestowaya. There are shots from the side in the USU. According to the author of this video, it is claimed that the artillery strike is already being carried out on the warehouse of the Russian troops, which are located in the village of Beresta. In other words, these frames at least confirm the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The footage here shows abandoned Russian equipment that was abandoned by units of the Russian army during the offensive, which were then simply finished off with the use of WAVs. In other words, the assaults are underway, the personnel have been received, the map has been corrected. Makovka-style artillery strikes are gradually being applied, positions are gradually being revealed, that is, the locality is being prepared for, let's say, an imminent assault by a unit of the Russian army. That is, if the Ukrainians manage to stabilize the front line in the Kharkiv direction, then if we talk about the other directions, then here, of course, the front line is gradually sinking. According to the Belagorsky direction, the Ministry of Defense has its weekly reports today, when it reports and pod. Summing up the results of the overall situation for the whole week, once again confirmed that the Russian units managed to establish control over several settlements, including the settlement of Baluguvka, during the week. To this day, cartographers and experts do not believe this information for some reason, and do not plan to adjust their maps. This is a rather big dilemma. We have corrected the map, since the summary of the Ministry of Defense is quite, let's say, a reliable source. And before that there were no errors. But the only thing that was published today was footage of artillery strikes by the armed forces of the Russian Federation on units in the USU in this area. Perhaps it was based on this from this video that the correction of the map of various cartographers took place. Then we move with you to the south. In the area of the disputed settlement, the cleaning of the area continues, also, let's say, in the village. Or rather what is left of it. The same ruins are gradually and systematically preparing for further assault operations. And for further assault operations, which are currently paused due to the fact that there is still enough they dug up strong points and fortified areas in their time, and it is very difficult to break through here. Then we are moving with you to the Yar direction, from where information continues to arrive about fierce fighting. In the area of the easternmost, let's say, Yar Clock. In these frames, for example, we can observe with you a downed Ukrainian tank during fierce battles. Already in the central part of the eastern Chaz Yar, a little to the south. Along, let's say, the Golubkovsky Stupa and the German forest. Russian units are already continuing to transfer heavy equipment to the settlement itself. The fighting doesn't stop for a minute. Russian units are storming Kalinovka, sweeping operations are underway with the use of drones. They are constantly engaged in dropping explosives on the strongholds of the armed forces of Ukraine. To the south, the Ivanovo Russian units began artillery training in the forest located between the canal and the Ivanovo. This is the last, let's say, more or less significant stronghold from the USU side, which they are trying to cling to on this side. However, this stronghold, this area, including the high ground, will be forced to leave sooner or later. If we talk about Kleshivka, then here the cadres are already beginning to catch up with us, let's say. The flight of the high-altitude units from the settlement. In the footage, we can observe strikes on the southernmost, westernmost, southwestern outskirts. Here it was the last days of the battles when they retreated in the forest under the blows of the grads. In the direction of the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal, New York, Novgorod. The fabization of the locality continues. In large numbers, fabs arrive, everything that can fly and explode arrives in large numbers. The situation is extremely difficult, but so far no ground support and no attack has been undertaken. A very interesting shot is coming from the Avdiivka direction today. It is reported that approximately on these frames we can observe how a soldier in the USU decided to surrender. But in order to surrender, He did not just surrender, he stole a Ukrainian tank. Along with the tank came to the positions of the Russian army, where he surrendered. He was safely accepted along with the tank. If we talk about the fields to the west of Osheretyn, Solovyev, Berdik and Semenovka, then here so far without any progress. With the exception of some shots that came from the west of the southwestern outskirts of Amansky. We can observe the flag of Russian units on the outskirts of the building, which is confirmed by the full unconditional control over the terrain. So far, the Ministry of Defense has not reported this fact, but I think that tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, this information will be announced. Krasnogorovka. The blow is already being struck on the northernmost street of Schmidt. Most likely, it is already possible that the unit in the forest is gradually being evacuated to the northern part, or they are already trying to keep some of their supplies, warehouses there, and generally stay as close as possible to the main evacuation lines. Therefore, Russian units are gradually shifting their focus in this direction. In general, as well as in other areas, the battle for Krasnogorovka is coming to its inevitable end. Fighting continues in Proskoveka today. Russian units have managed to expand the control zone. As in Poroskovevka itself, there is confirmation from various cartographers that most of the settlement is already under the control of the Russian army. The Ukrainians keep mostly only the possibility of farms in the northwest, plus possibly hangars, barracks in the area of the bridge. No more than that. But in general, the battle is coming to an end here. Today, footage of the next assault operation was published in small quantities. One Beha, with a small number of troops on board, is moving in the direction of the sawmills. Here it cuts through the fields. Fearless fighters definitely. They are not afraid of any minefields, they are not afraid of anything. Without tank cover, without trawls, without jamming, demining equipment crosses a large field. In fact, lands in positions in the forest and begins to clean up. Yes, the operation, of course, well, it's crazy, that's for sure. And after the landing, the cleanup begins. If we go back to the map with you, then, let's say, the Russian armored personnel carrier was moving along approximately this route. Having reached here, there was a landing from the anchoring on the ground. In other words, we see that gradually Russian units continue to move towards the main supply route 0524. In order to cut off the grouping in the corner of gifts from supplies from the north and say, perhaps even from the northeast. Then we are moving with you to the Roman tactical bridgehead. The Russian units, as I understand it, are continuing the sweep. Already the sweep is possible starting from the Old Major. Also, in the coming days, information is likely to be received about the complete cleansing and taking control of the settlement. Perhaps even about a certain number of prisoners of war who will not have time to actually get out of the encirclement. From the formed artillery pocket, a little to the north in the area of Makarovka, and higher in the direction of Velikaya Novoselovka, Russian units inflict the maximum possible fire damage along the main supply routes by transfer routes. That is, they give time to gain a foothold on Staromayorsky, clean up and work out in a calm mode, and go out already to the northern outskirts in order to move further to Makarovka. In other words, as you can see, the main strikes were on this lane. Neskishnaya River Storozova Makarovka. Then we are moving with you to Gulyapol. From Gulyapol, footage is published of a FAB strike on a temporary deployment point of the armed forces of Ukraine in the settlement itself, as a result of which the building was completely destroyed. There has also been some activity over the past month, especially after the Russian units took control of Marfapol as much as possible. Perhaps a settlement is also being prepared for an assault action. Perhaps they just keep, say, Russian units of soldiers from the AFU units in some kind of, let's say, tone. And the Cossack camps. Ukrainians in the Kherson direction continue to play a game of sapper or a game of flags, installing, dropping flags on magnets, on everything that is metal, and forcing Russian units to open their positions, go out, let's say, under a drone strike, in order to remove one or another flag somewhere along the Dnieper River. And also today, in the area of the settlement of Izium, the location of the units was revealed. In my opinion, according to the author of this video, the third assault, and therefore, it turns out that the point of temporary dislocation was struck with the use of Iskander. So far, there has been no information about losses among the Apu, but there is an extremely high probability that the losses were quite significant and high. In other words, this is the story that happened today, in the last 24 hours. As you can see, everything is developing extremely dynamically. To take another walk is the suppression of air defense in the Crimea, and an attempt to break through the air defense. In the direction of the General Staff, the suppression, let's say, of the means of premature detection of nuclear missiles of the Russian Federation, negotiations in Minsk, illegitimate Zelensky. Regarding the illegitimate Zelensky, today there was the biggest frame in general. The most interesting information came from, let's say, the chairman of the Verkhovna Rada, who said that the one who raises the question of Zelensky's legitimacy, the one who asks this question out loud, or even the one who thinks about it, is already an enemy of the state,